Welcome. This is Gary Salton, Chief of R&D and creator of IOPT Technology. This brief video will help orient you to the IOPT Change Management Report. Change management is just a name used to describe various ways to get people to do things differently. People have offered a lot of ways to help guide the process of change. This slide shows just some of those now being used. There are many more, but they all have one thing in common. That common denominator is you. If you don't absorb the change, then the process fails. The only question is the degree of failure. But your ability to absorb change is not your only effect. Your behavior affects others. Some of these behaviors facilitate change. Others impede it. You are important in more than one way. And this applies to every other person in your group. Just as you can make change easier or harder for them, they can do the same thing to you. It is to everyone's benefit to try to make the change process as easy as possible. The IOPT Change Management Report is designed to help this process, both for you and for the people with whom you work. It does this by focusing on information processing. Here's how it works. In order to navigate life, you had to figure out some way to process information. You chose your input standards. You decided to pay attention to detail or to ignore it. You elected to focus tightly on central aspects or to try to understand issues in all of their dimensions. In other words, you chose to look at the world in a certain resolution. Then you chose how you're going to handle information. For example, you might carefully assess the information, or you might just accept things at face value. Finally, you chose a typical response. For example, you might be inclined to act instantly, or you may want to mull things over a bit before deciding. Over time, you settled on a particular strategy to use regularly. That information processing choice will, to a large degree, determine your behavior. For example, the choice of a detail-sensitive strategy will slow you down. Detail takes time to collect and to process. There is no choice about the result. The speed of chemical reactions between the neurons in your brain sets the maximum speed of processing. The amount of information you demand sets the total time needed. That will always be slower than a person of equal ability who chooses to ignore detail. This result is not a speculation about how you feel about anything. The outcome is certain. It is a necessary result of the strategy you have chosen. On the other side, you might focus only on the central elements of a situation. You will probably be fast, but less than precise. It does not matter how you feel about it. You won't have the data that precision demands. Again, the outcome is certain. It has nothing to do with who you are. Information processing preferences are all that is needed to explain the differences that we can all see. Now, there are only 4 basic information processing strategies. We call them strategic styles. However, they can be mixed and matched in a host of different ways. The particular one you have chosen is the right one for you. Other people lead different lives and face different situations. For them, other strategies are optimal. Organizations face an entire range of possible situations. As a result, most are populated with people using a variety of styles. Like you, these other people have their favored way of doing things. Meshing your approach with theirs may not be easy. But with a little consideration and a little mutual accommodation, the end result will benefit everyone. You, your coworkers, and the organization as a whole. The IOPT Change Management Report is designed to help this process along. So, let's take a look at the report one page at a time. Page 1 is orientational. It identifies the primary styles that you tend to rely on. You have access to all of the others. However, the qualities associated with these are the ones most likely to be displayed. Page 2 defines some of the behaviors that follow from your primary strategic style. The first section talks about the general characteristics that set the tone for these behavioral choices. The next section shows some of the typical stances you are likely to take. For example, if quality was cited as a general characteristic in the first section, you are probably going to want time to test and refine before accepting proposed changes. That's how you get quality. You don't need psychology to figure this out, just a little logic and some common sense. In the final section, your likely postures are grouped into general categories. This can make it easier for you to compare your posture with that of others. If you do this, you are likely to find that others hold very different positions. These differences are the kinds of things that have to be reconciled to organizationally absorb the planned changes. Page 3 shows tendencies based on your secondary style. Your primary strategy will not apply to every situation. When it doesn't, you are likely to use this secondary approach. You may find that some of the tendencies on this page differ from those of your primary style. The reason is that when you are using your secondary style, you are sensitive to different things. For example, in some situations you might welcome close supervision. In others, you may dislike it. There is no reason that you have to be consistent across different situations. Page 4 begins with a brief explanation of information processing. We have already covered this, so let's move on. This is a histogram, or bar chart, of all your style strengths. The more you are committed to a particular style, the more likely you are to display its characteristics. If your style scores are close, there still should be a ring of truth to this report. But you may disagree with particular points. The computer that generated the report can only work on the probabilities given by your style strengths. The closer your styles are to each other, the less certain are these probabilities. Page 5 talks about the change process as it applies to you. There are many ways to describe it, but for our purposes, let's use the simplest. When changing, people will have to stop doing at least some of the things that they now do. People favoring different styles will have different issues with this stopping phase. The ones cited in your report are the ones you are likely to confront. People must then shift to another way of doing things. This requires learning, practice, and perhaps a little experimentation. The points cited in your report are the ones you are likely to encounter. The way you resolve these can cause issues to arise with others who face different challenges. Things begin to move faster as the change process becomes the norm. Different people are likely to react to this new phase differently. Your report cites your likely stance on this phase of the process. But keep in mind, this is your likely reaction, not everyone's. Your primary and secondary styles interact. This interaction creates even more characteristic behaviors. To use this page, just look at the name of your secondary style on page 3 and locate the citation on this page. Now, take a moment and read the other patterns. They all pertain to people who share your primary style, but use a different secondary style. This can cause them to react very differently than you do. Sharing the same primary style does not mean that you will handle situations in the same way. Ideally, you will involve yourself in a dialogue with others with whom you work. However, there will always be situations involving people outside of your group. Page 7 is designed to help you address this inevitable issue. The behavioral characteristics in red are a rough signal of a person's likely style preference. This is a crude method. However, it is a lot better than nothing. It can give you a clue on what to expect and how to best react to it. The final page of the report summarizes your strategic posture along all 4 dimensions in a single graphic. You can use this to compare yourself to others. The more your profile varies from another person, the more different will be your approaches to change. But regardless of how similar or different your profile is from that of another person, keep in mind that their approach is as legitimate as is yours. After all, it worked well enough to make them a factor in your life. Your strategic posture deserves respect, and so does theirs. Thank you for viewing this video. If you want more information on IOPT, you can go to our websites at IOPT.com or oeinstitute.org. Both sites have much more information on how IOPT can be used to improve the functioning of both individuals and groups. Thank you again for your interest in IOPT technology.